Now that the new year is here, a lot of people are going to be looking to change their dietary strategy. Some people might want to go to a higher fat diet. Some people might want to even try some carb cycling. But here's the thing, your gut doesn't necessarily know that you're about to make this change, and you could run into trouble. Stay tuned to today's episode to find out more. Welcome back to the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Today, I have on my friend and returning guest, Steve Wright. And again, we want to talk about this issue of switching dietary approaches. This takes a lot of mental fortitude. It takes a lot of dedication to get to the point where you really shift your entire diet. So people are doing this, and then they are having the issues with their gut, which is just absolutely no fun. So some people, again, switching to a higher fat diet. Some people may be even interested in doing a little bit of carb cycling here in the new year. Both of those can be problematic for your digestive system. If you have been on a high carb diet, switch to a low carb. If you've been on a low carb diet or keto diet and switch to just eating some carbohydrates, your body's not used to that. So thank you, Steve, for being here today and talking through some of these things. All of Steve's information and everything we talk about will be linked down in the show notes for you. I love his products because they all have a money back guarantee. I have had people that they just don't work, and I've seen them get their money back. So I know that this is legitimate, it works, and it does help people. So again, check those out linked in the show notes. And a quick little reminder, my quantum nutrition course is going to be releasing on February 15th. If you want to get the special introductory price, make sure that you are on the wait list. That's going to be linked down in the show notes for you. And I'm going to be changing the pricing on all of my courses on February 15th. If you are interested, if you've been on the fence, go ahead and grab those now before I do change the prices. And you can use code podcast to save on any of my courses at any time. Now, couple sponsors I want to thank before we jump into today's episode. Viva Rays is my source for circadian glasses. You can use my code YOGI to save on those. If you are not sleeping, your gut cells are not turning over and you will have gut issues. So use my code YOGI to save on those circadian glasses over at Viva Rays. There's a link in the show notes. Second sponsor of today's episode is Optimal Carnivore. Fantastic way to fill in nutritional gaps on any diet. Their organ meat complex was absolutely instrumental in helping me through pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and now postpartum. So check them out and use code CarnivoreY to save on those. And let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year and welcome back to the show. Returning guest here today, Steve Wright, my gut health expert. Thank you for being here today, Steve.
Yeah, Sarah, Happy New Year. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you, and figured we would do this like off of a live stream for once. So sometimes when we do those live streams, we're getting pinged with questions the whole time. And so this time just wanted to do a focused chat about New Year, because I think a lot of people are really looking to change their diet in the new year. And your gut doesn't really get that message, right?
Right. Yeah, it's the new year, it's the new you. A lot of people are looking to change up how they've been living, whether they're trying to lose weight or change their, their hair, their skin, their digestion. And what we decide in our minds and what we read on the internet or in books, nobody types that up in a memo or a business plan and passes it along to our gut. And that could create, and it usually does create, no matter the diet you switch from or to, it normally creates problems.
Yep, absolutely. And, I guess my biggest audience portion right now, this is kind of shifting and changing. But right now, a lot of people are trying to go towards a more high fat, lower carb approach, and the gut issues are starting. So maybe we could talk about that approach first and kind of what those people need to look out for with gut health issues and how we can help them.
Yeah, for sure. And I hope that this chat gives people, the goal is for everyone. I was reflecting on my last couple of years earlier this morning about like, what have I learned? What have I not learned? And I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that we need to be more self-reliant. We need to understand our bodies better and not rely on doctors, medics, surgeons, even nutritionists to tell us what to do, because they don't live inside of us. We are our best judge of what's happening inside of our body, as long as we're being truthful and not, lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so in that light, I don't want to make any diet change, right or wrong, today, no matter what you've already signed up for. We're already into the new year. So you're probably on your 30 days or 60 days into this new change. So let's just help you get better results no matter where you're going. And so for those people who are adopting a higher fat content diet, I mean, normally I'm guessing they're complaining about oily toilet, explosive diarrhea.
Diarrhea. That's the number one, because I have a lot of people come into my private membership group now. And they're like, okay, so many things are getting better for me following this lower carb, higher fat approach. However, the diarrhea is uncomfortable. So yeah, let's talk about that right off the bat. What is causing that for these people?
Yeah, a lot of times it's simply just too much fat for the body to handle. And when that happens, the body has sensing mechanisms inside of the gut. And specifically, we're talking about the small and large intestine, that when it detects too much of something, like in this case, fat or malabsorbed fat or something, it sort of hits the red stop button or the red alarm bell. And it's like, flush, just flush, like, get this out. Something's going wrong. There's nutrients in places that don't belong. And so let's get it out of there. And there's also water that gets sucked into the gut, and there's too much fat malabsorbed. And so that will also cause that explosion. And this is not a good thing. So I've had conversations with women in my life who I love dearly, who are like, well, a couple of days of diarrhea, I feel slimmer. I feel like I'm losing weight.
Yeah.
And I get it. You can have a tighter tummy, but it is transient, and it is not health promoting, and it won't last. There will be a rebound effect.
After a couple of days, I think a lot of women are like miserable. I think they maybe let it go for a couple of days, but then they come to me when they've become miserable with the situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the goal is to stop this, right? The goal is to eat a diet that your body can process, that you can actually extract the nutrients from the foods that you're taking in. And so if you go on a high fat diet, you have one of two choices. One, you can make the conclusion that if I'm getting diarrhea and oily toilet, this is not a diet for me. Or two, I need support during the transition phase. And so the number one way to support someone through this phase is by introducing a really powerful digestive enzyme. So most people don't like type up a memo. And even if you could, you can't really, alert the pancreas like, hey, I'm going to need you to work overtime on making enzymes, make a lot of lipase. Lipase is the big fat malabsorbing or fat breakdown enzyme inside your gut. But also there's bile acids coming out of the gallbladder and bicarbonate that's coming into the small intestine, and they all mix together. And this mixture sort of breaks down fats and allows the body to cleave them apart, break them into fatty acids you can absorb. That's what we want. And that's where you want to get to on a keto diet. And so without a doubt, the number one thing I tell anybody switching to a keto or a high fat diet is to get on our holozyme. Make sure you're taking 2 to 4 per meal, because sometimes people make big swings, like they are accidentally on a low fat diet, and then they switch to like
high fat,
200 grams a day of fat or something
Lord,
crazy.
No. Yeah.
So I would, you can go as high as 6 per meal if you want. You could probably even go higher. There's no real upper limit on digestive enzymes. If you don't have Healthy Guts Holozymes, but you have another brand you've already bought because you've listened to other people who talk about this, great. And if it's not working for you though, keep doubling the dosage till it works, or get your money back and buy an enzyme that works.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about for this situation also. The gallbladder. how do they need to do like TUDCA, ox bile to support the gallbladder? Because I feel like a lot of people, they don't know that they have a gallbladder issue until they do a high fat diet. Or would the enzymes be sufficient for that situation?
So I think the enzymes are sufficient for 80 to 85% of everybody.
Okay.
Some people respond really well to TUDCA supplementation. Like it's a
Okay.
big deal for them. I think you've seen that, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely.
A lot of people, some percentage of people though, don't notice anything. And it seems so, I haven't found like a good barometer, unless you have, of like, hey, if you have this red line on your forehead, that means you're, you need TUDCA. I don't know a good symptom to tell people to look for, other than get a good brand and just try it and see if it helps.
Yep.
That's the best I can do. You can also try things like either, you could do just replacement ox bile, but again, I typically don't go that route because I think in general the results are not as positive as I would like. And so I would rather see people using like beetroot or taurine
Okay.
supplementation to sort of increase bile acid production and support the gallbladder.
Okay. And then the role of stomach acid in this type of a situation as well. Could it possibly be a low stomach acid and not enzymatic function, or is it probably a little bit of both? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Most of the times it's a little bit of both.
Mm.
So if your meat consumption has also gone up, then it's probably definitely a low stomach acid issue as well. The reason why, even if your meat consumption, let's say you're on a strict keto, like 4-to-1 diet, like a therapeutic keto diet, your meat consumption should be pretty low. In case you don't know, it should be pretty low because you can easily bounce yourself out of ketosis with too much protein. So in that case, though, your digestive enzymes inside your body, like the ones made inside your body, they need a certain pH window in order for them to turn on and do their job. It's between 7 and 9 on the pH scale in your upper small intestine. If you're exhibiting low stomach acid already going into the diet, or if this diet change has been accompanied by stress because it's a big deal in your life, you may now have low stomach acid. That's going to mean that your pH is higher in your stomach. I know it's it bounces back and forth. It's very confusing to my brain. I don't know if it is to anybody else's, but the pH will actually be higher when it dumps into the small intestine. And then when all the rest of the stuff that happens in the small intestine happens, the pH will go even higher. And sometimes it can go above 9. It can go to 10, 11, 12. When that happens, the enzymes don't work that well. And so the best way to deal with that is to do something called a betaine HCl challenge, just to check if you have a pH issue in your stomach that's affecting everything downstream.
Got it. And so if somebody wanted to do that HCl challenge, I always have like a little PDF I email clients, things like that. Can we go over that briefly for people?
Yeah. Yep. So the HCl challenge can be done with any betaine HCl supplement with like 500 milligrams or more per capsule. You also want to see some pepsin in there. Doesn't need intrinsic factor, but that's what HCl Guard, the product we have, has in there. Anyways, 500 milligrams or more on the back of your label, plus pepsin. Take one capsule with your normal dinner tonight and just observe what happens. And for most people who do this, they won't notice much at all. Some small percentage of people, less than 5%, will have like a burning sensation or a hot sensation in their like upper GI area. If that's you, that usually means you have a something called gastritis or an active ulcer. You have mucosal damage in your stomach usually. And this is downstream from a number of things, usually hormone issues. And so what you'll want to do when you have that sort of hotness is take a half teaspoon or a teaspoon of baking soda, put it in a little bit of water, 4 ounces or something, and drink it down, and it'll nullify it because it's a base and an acid and they come together and no more pain. That means that you should go talk to your doctor, talk to Sarah, get yourself on a mucosal healing program for like 6 to 8 weeks, and then you can try again. if you actually have high acid, which is a rare number of people,
Very
like
rare.
usually less than 3%, you'll have the same feeling. You will not have any of the other symptoms of mucosal issues, and you'll just do the baking soda. And that's not for you. You don't have low acid, you have high acid, but also it's very rare. For the rest of the people, they won't feel much. They may notice slightly better bowel movements tomorrow, or slightly less bloating, or slightly less oil in the toilet. That's a good sign, because tomorrow you're going to take 2 capsules with your dinner and see what happens. Again, if you feel hotness or burning or uncomfortableness, take some baking soda, nullify that. If that's not you, you're going to keep progressing up each like day. You're going to go up another capsule. What you're trying to find is there'll be a sweet zone. Usually, some people it's 3 capsules, some people it's 5, some people it's 6, some people it's just 2, where your symptomology, whatever you have, you might have low energy, slight bloating, and then mild diarrhea. Your goal is to get slightly more energy, less bloating, and then a fully formed number 5 or number 4 on the Bristol stool chart. When you hit that amount, that's when you've kind of hit your sweet spot in beta-HCl capsules. Now, the other way to sort of like figure that out is sometimes, and this happens for I think 70% of people, you'll get to you'll go from 4 to 5 capsules on day 6, and it'll feel that burning sensation. Just take your baking soda, nullify the situation, and then whatever you use the day prior, that's your ideal dosage. So in that case, it's 4 per day for you, for your body type, for the diet you're eating. So there's 2 ways. Not everybody will feel the burning, and that's been a source of contention and confusion with this supplement for like 40 years.
Yeah.
So I try to educate people first about the fact that the goal is an improvement in your symptoms and the way you're digesting your food and what your poop looks like and what your symptoms are. If you're seeing that, you don't have to get to the burning thing. You never have to even feel it if you don't want to. But the easier thing for most people is to, keep increasing till they hit, 5, and instead they need 4.
Okay. So people that might want to look at the low stomach acid are people that are maybe just adding more protein to their diet. They could be, taking some carbs away, sure. But in general, they're not used to eating, meat. And they might feel like they've got like a brick in their stomach when they eat meat and they're not digesting it. But those people are just the people that are probably adding more meat to their diet, right?
Yep. People who are now experiencing heartburn, burping after meals. They feel like you said, like a brick is in their upper abdomen after they eat. Bloating. If you have a history of SIBO, candida overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, any sort of history of small intestinal bacteria issues, that's you. And yeah, normally it's from an increase in meat. However, I know this might be not yet ready for this show, but say you went mostly plant-based. If you increase your lentil consumption by a ton, or any other protein food, that including vegetables, the same thing could happen.
Got it.
Could be nuts. Like you could have gone from hardly eating any nuts to eating like nut everything all day long. That it could cause the same thing.
Highly do not recommend this technique.
Yeah.
Okay. And people who, I think you were saying with the HCl that there could be a mucosal issue. So is that where you're talking about a leaky gut situation, right?
I didn't mean it necessarily in that perspective, but we could totally talk about how to kind of detect if you have leaky gut after a change in diet. What I was referring to mostly was if somebody takes 1 capsule of a beta and HCl supplement, immediately feels some sort of heatness, burning sensation. Most of those individuals have gastritis of some type, some degree of it.
An ulcer, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Gastritis is a spectrum. Ulcers on what is the worst part of it at the far end. But you can just have mild heartburn and gastritis and just never think about it until you do a test like this. And you're like, oh,
yeah,
something's going on down there.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people in that situation, and those people that are in that situation need to not necessarily be slamming the HCl, correct?
Correct. It doesn't mean you don't have low stomach acid. In
Right.
fact, most of those folks do have low stomach acid. It's just that your body can't even handle a replacement or increase in your acid levels because the organs that contain the acid, literally your stomach, your esophagus, the sphincters on either end, are not healthy enough to work properly. And so you need to stop that intervention and focus on healing your mucosal barriers first.
Got it. Okay. So then we move on to the leaky gut issue, because I've had some people that switch to a higher fat diet. Now we'll talk a little bit more about someone switching from other types of diets, but for the first part of this, I want to talk about the high fat diet people. And some of them, they get on the HCl, they get on the enzymes, they feel better, but they still have like diarrhea issue. They still are having like some kind of issue. And I'm like, this might be a butyrate situation. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So if you've already switched your diet, you've already checked for low stomach acid, you're supporting that if you need it, you've checked for digestive enzyme deficiency, you've checked that, you've needed or you've handled it or whatever. You've also played with your dosages because a lot of people don't play. Again, it's very important to remember the back of the bottle from Healthy Gut, as well as every other supplement company. While at least I can only speak for Healthy Gut, but I think it's true for the majority of companies, we have ethical and moral standards to put dosages on the back of the bottle that do help you. It is mostly a legal document and it's not based on your body or your diet. So you need to work with somebody to figure out your ideal dosage or educate yourself enough to understand how to play with supplements to find the ideal dosage. So
and you guys have that group also. So I always love to mention that. That's something that Healthy Gut does that no other gut health company I've ever worked with or found does. You have a Facebook group where you have like all these amazing PDF documents. You've got health coaches in there to help people kind of figure out this dosing. So it's not just like, boom, this is it. Sorry, see you later. Bye. Like you guys actually have a way to help people after the fact, correct?
Yes. That's core to the mission that we're trying to do in this world, is to help teach people how to understand their bodies and the products they use to get the results they want. And so, we have health coaches, multiple health coaches on the team now. I think we're up to 4. Oh. And we have the Facebook group. We have lots of documents and PDFs to help you there.
Nice. So going back to the butyrate issue, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's great. I hope people are getting value at this point. So another issue that tends to rear its ugly head or be exposed when you make a diet change, and that's kind of what I like to think about these diet changes, is like it's kind of a fact-finding mission, right? You're asking your body to do something different. Let's see what happens. And depending on how it reacts, that tells you a lot about your health. So let's say that you are going from a carnivore diet to a more middle of the road diet, or a diet that's low in vegetable matter, I guess would be a great way to say it. Or we're like, I love meat and potatoes and I don't eat vegetables. Like whatever that is, let's say you're starting to eat a salad a day, or let's say you're starting to introduce some other things and you're getting bloating, maybe you're getting some skin issues, maybe you could be getting the diarrhea, and or some people get constipation. Another thing to check for is, do you have low butyrate?
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode or watching, whichever you're doing here on YouTube. I just want to thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're getting a lot from this episode. A reminder, all of Steve's information, everything we talk about, is linked down in the information section for you, as well as all my courses, everything that can also complement this work, along with dietary shifts and dietary changes. My quantum nutrition course will be out next week on the 15th, which is going to be a huge overview, kind of stepping away from diet dogma and just finding what is the best thing for you to be eating based on where you live, based on the time of year, what's in season, and what's going to work best with your gut microbiome. So again, make sure you're on the wait list for that course. It will be coming out next week on February 15th. And to get the special introductory price, you've got to be on the wait list. So that's down in the show notes. I do want to thank one more sponsor of today's episode, That is going to be upgraded formulas. You can use my code YOGI12 or YOGI to save on upgraded formulas. And they are my go-to source for understanding the mineral balance in my body. That hair tissue mineral analysis is amazing at helping you get to the bottom of any kind of mineral issues. These can cause issues with sleep, fatigue, muscle weakness, all of these things. Even a thyroid issue can be caused by a mineral imbalance. So you can use my code YOGI12 or YOGI if you've already used that one before, and that'll be linked down in the show notes for you to get that hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation or any of their supplements. Thank you again so much for listening. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you like this video, share it out with a friend or family member, or anyone who is trying to make a dietary change right now and needs some extra support, especially with their gut. All right, let's jump back into today's episode. Thanks again for watching.
And butyrate is one of the molecules that your microbiome gives off when everything is healthy. So when everything is healthy down there, no matter what diet you're on, your microbiome will be turning your food into, your food contains things called prebiotics, so before. It will interact with your microbiome and the probiotics, or the healthy alive bacteria. And one of the things that it gives off is butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid. And this is the most important one of the group because it's what our colonocytes, or the cells that line the colon that interact with the gut, it's what they prefer to use for their metabolism. Now, lots of other cells prefer other things. These colonocytes prefer butyric acid. And when they do that, they suck oxygen out of the intestines because that type of metabolism requires oxygen molecules. That's really beautiful because the healthy microbiome species that everybody's trying to get, like, it doesn't matter what prebiotic, probiotic, it doesn't matter what type of gut protocol you're after. Without a doubt, the species you are after fall into a group called anaerobic bacteria. These are bacteria that live without oxygen. Anaerobic is without. So we want a low oxygen environment because the healthy bugs that are associated with longevity, with great moods and brain function, that are associated with fat loss and weight metabolism or healthy weight support, they're associated with non-IBS or non-IBD. Like, all those bugs are anaerobes. They need low oxygen environment. If the oxygen content and the butyric acid content of your gut is wrong, they literally cannot grow. So it doesn't matter if you take a probiotic, it doesn't matter if you take a prebiotic, they can't actually get the results you're hoping to get long-term because the environment of which you're throwing them into isn't working. It's like throwing people in space without oxygen. Like, it's not going to work. They'll go up there for a little bit and then they'll die every time. Same thing's true inside your gut. And so you can interject with butyric acid supplements like tributylin, and you can basically end this sort of vicious cycle that's happening, stabilize the gut, and then all those other gut healing products and the foods you're eating will be better utilized and absorbed.
Got it. So that's going to be for those people that are, again, HCl optimized, digestive enzymes optimized, still maybe having diarrhea, still maybe having issues. That's when you look into something like butyrate, right?
Correct. Yep. Unless they've exposed a histamine related issue. Let's say they made a change and you're having like hives, tachycardia. Those are the most common ones. You can look up like rashes. You can look up a list of like
runny nose.
Runny nose. Yeah. Think about seasonal allergies, like whatever happens during seasonal allergy season. If you've exposed that you have a histamine related issue, no matter what diet you came from or going to, those people may want to try tributylin sooner than others because the butyric acid in there helps stabilize the mast cells and helps stop the overreactivity to like everything. Got it.
I didn't send you this question in advance, but I do have a question about oxalates and the gut. I don't know how much you know about that, but I'm having a lot of people and people that are probably going to be watching this. You know, first we've got the people that have been more high carb, trying to get down to low carb, trying to get down to a more ketogenic diet. Now I've got a whole separate group of people who have been carnivore and keto for a very long time. And they're interested in trying some carb cycling, trying to start getting metabolic flexibility. One issue I'm running into, I know that among many issues, right, which we could probably talk through, but one of them is oxalate issue. So they're eating things like potatoes and then they get joint pain. Is that something where they should just avoid? And I'm just like, oh, if you get the joint pain, just let's not eat potatoes. Let's try something else. But is there anything that we can do with the gut, with any of the healthy gut products that could help this issue, or that you know? I know I just kind of threw that curveball at you, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think oxalates are one of the fads of today. Like
Yeah.
they're kind of like a fad of 2022 and 2023. I say fad because when I started this stuff in 2009 and 2010, oxalates were a really big deal too, and then they
Mhm.
weren't for a long time.
They cycle
And
in and out, I think. Yeah.
yeah, just like lectins were a super
Oh
big deal.
God.
There's isn't there lectins in white potatoes?
I think, yeah, I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, in white potatoes, for the record, in my opinion, and I think if you threw this on a whiteboard with a bunch of other foods, you would find that white potatoes are one of the most inert foods out there without the peel. Okay, peel
Right.
the white potato, don't eat the skin. The white potato just cooked in water is one of the safest, most inert foods out there.
And a great
And
source of potassium too.
yeah, and it actually has a decent amount of protein in it.
Yep. Yep.
And also can help your butyrate because it has
Oh,
prebiotics in it.
okay.
Um, That being said, if you don't tolerate white potato, you don't tolerate it. And we should be asking questions about why. Is it the
Mm.
oxalate content? Is it are there some other I think it might fall on the shoot, what's the pepper thing
Oh
that
yeah,
people
the nightshades.
nightshade. So it has
Yep.
some nightshade properties in
Hmm.
there.
It does.
Um, there might be some lectins in there, and there might be some oxalates in there. So, what are you reacting to? You can't blame oxalates. Do you know that it's not the nightshades? Do you know that it's
Nightshades. Yeah.
yeah? I get kind of militant about this because we are amazing. I'm amazing at this. And this is why
Hmm.
I want to educate people about it because I've been doing it to myself for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Is that we observe something, we read something online, we hear something, and then we observe something in ourselves, we make up a story about it, and
Yep.
then that's our story, but we never question our assumptions, which was what are the other stories that could be
Hmm.
true about this?
Hmm.
Um, Rob Wolf wrote an amazing book about carbs and about how certain people don't tolerate certain carbs correctly. Maybe your white potato issue is a glucose issue. You haven't fixed your metabolic issues. If you're
Right.
not wearing a CGM when you eat white potatoes versus white rice versus corn, you won't know how those carbohydrates
Hmm.
uh, change your blood glucose. So
Right.
all I'm saying is that there could be a number of reasons to explain your joint pain, one of which is that joint issues run in your family. Therefore, your genetic weak link is going to be your joints. And in this case, we have a food that's pissing them off. What is the reason it's pissing them off? I don't know that we know,
Right.
but you can look into literature and find out that certain bacteria, certain microbiome species do break down oxalates better than others. And if you have a deficiency of these bacteria, you could have oxalate issues. There are folks who have legitimate oxalate issues.
Hmm.
This is a real thing for a subgroup of
Hmm.
people, just like it's a real thing that lectins affect certain subgroups of people
Hmm.
as well as nightshades. So I'm not saying those things are fake. I'm just saying that the percentage is usually much smaller than we want to believe.
Right.
And if you optimize your enzymes, if you optimize your stomach acid will nullify quite a few of these bad chemicals.
Right.
A lot of times you can, in this case, tolerate white potatoes much better than you used to be able to. But there's only one way to know, and that is to, optimize your acid, optimize your enzymes, maybe even add TUDCA, optimize your gallbladder, and then see what happens. Retry the white potato in the same way you tried it last time.
Right. So kind of jumping back to this issue, because a lot of people, like I said, are kind of, they've been carnivore, they've been keto for a long time. They want to start reintroducing some carbs. They may not have that metabolic flexibility to be able to uptake that glucose. So I always have them test your blood sugar before the meal, test it 20 minutes after, and then at 2 hours. If it spikes over 20, 30 points and it doesn't come back down at the end of the 2 hours, it's a problematic food. You may want to take it out for a couple weeks and try something else. Is there anything that we do with enzymes or HCl that could help with that glucose uptake? Or is that just purely going to be the metabolism at work here?
No. It's 100% tied to your digestion and your
Okay.
ability to digest. So, for
Okay.
instance, Holozymes had 2 pilot trials run on it. In those pilot trials, they took a group of type 2 diabetics. This is 12 people and under. These are pilot clinical trials, so these are not, super substantial data points, and they haven't been repeated in large groups of people. But they did have people do placebo and enzyme capsules, and they had them do postprandial blood sugar readings, and they saw an average 18% reduction in the active group versus the placebo group of their blood sugar spike. So the spike was lower for those. And this was in people who had known blood sugar issues, type 2 diabetics.
Okay.
So it's not going to say that if you have a CGM, you take Holozymes, the dose was 2 per meal in that study. It's not to say that it will work for you, but it is to say that your point is correct, which is that how we digest our foods does 100% influence our metabolic flexibility that we're measuring with other devices.
Okay. Okay. So in simple terms, if you're trying to add some carbohydrates in, if you haven't had them in a really long time, it would be wise for not only your blood sugar, but also your digestive issues, your digestive system, to have digestive enzymes, something like a holozyme to take along with that meal, especially if you haven't had carbohydrates in a super long time, right?
100%, and go slow, because
Yeah.
so there's a couple ways you could look at this, and I like to spin things because I don't like to. I mean, I know I'm making an assumption and missing things, but I like to try to find my assumptions. And so one of the things people fail to do is they fail to appreciate how fast our microbiome changes and how fast our body responds to things. But they also, again, don't type up any emails and send them down the tube and say like, hey guys, we're eating white rice for dinner tonight. I know we haven't had it in a decade, but just be ready. And then they try it and they're like, oh, this is delicious.
Right.
It's amazing carrier for all these, all these flavors. I love white rice. And they're just a couple of cups later, everything's going sideways. Bloating, blood sugar's crazy, whatever else is happening for you, maybe joint pains. Please introduce things slowly. And I mean slowly, like half of a cup or less, quarter of a cup if it's like something you haven't had in many, many years, and then introduce it each day. So for instance, if potatoes are an issue for you, or white rice is an issue for you, try a quarter cup today, and then a half cup tomorrow, and then 3/4 of a cup the next day, and then a full cup the next day. That might sound like boring and slow, but guess what that does? It blooms the right bacteria that are necessary to deal with that food, all the prebiotics inside of that food, all the enzymes and everything that you need to break that down. Every day you're giving your body a slight increase in dosage, saying like, hey, we eat this. We are exposed to this every day. Be prepared. And so I feel like people are like trying to test foods and wondering what's their issue. They make up stories about oxalates, lectins, whatever. But if you go from 0 to 2 cups of broccoli,
oh gosh, yeah,
you're going to have issues, and you can blame it on whatever you want, but that's just, you just don't have the body ready for that. No one does.
Right. Yeah, when I went from strict carnivore to, I mean, just adding in something as simple as asparagus, I was using the healthy gut enzymes. This was the beginning of 2021. That's how I actually found you. That's why I started talking with you, is because I was transitioning to adding in some different, just vegetables, even they were keto vegetables. They weren't even like the potatoes or anything like that. And I really needed the healthy gut enzymes to help me utilize those foods so that I didn't have horrible reactions. And then when I did, because if you haven't had certain foods in a really long time, even if it's asparagus, it's pretty delicious, and you can go overboard with some of those foods. And so the enzymes, just speaking from my experience, not only did they help my body digest those, but if I happened to go overboard, I would use them systemically. So before bed, I would take 3 or 4 of those, on a more so empty stomach, probably like 3, 4 hours away from my meal, and then allow them to kind of work in my sleep. And then the next day I would wake up and I wouldn't have, the usual bloating and I wouldn't feel like I had kind of taken my gut on a wild ride the day before. So I think that having those on hand for people can be really helpful when they do want to start doing food reintroductions, which I think a lot of people are starting to want to do at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And in those studies I mentioned earlier, they did do a dosage of 2 pills before bed as well. So
Okay.
we can't say that the blood sugar changes were just because of what was taken at the meal. It could have also been affected by the systemic dosing. And you're right. Like systemic enzyme usage, so taking enzyme products away from food, has a number of studied benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and many of them could be contributors to a dietary change where you're seeing these wonky gut and skin and joint and everything feelings that you're attributing to your food, but it might just be that your body's inflammation levels are so high already, or something else that's going on in your gut. And so definitely giving yourself support as you ramp in and out of diets is a great way to just be successful. Like there's a lot
Right.
of diets out there you may want to do for 12 weeks or 16 weeks
Right.
or 6 months to lose to achieve a certain goal. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's joint pain reduction, maybe it's weight loss. I don't
Right.
know what it is, but these are powerful tools, but
Mm-hmm.
they can be really hellish and
Mm-hmm.
confusing and annoying if you assume that your gut can do what you're asking it to, but you never really had the conversation. You don't have any testing to prove it. And you're just sort of reliant on what the message boards and the Facebook groups say.
Right. Which that can be such a huge headache. And so people I want to talk about just different dietary strategies and kind of sum up a little bit to make it simple for anybody listening. A lot of people will want to go to a more ketogenic approach, even a more carnivore approach if they have autoimmune issues, if they're leptin resistant or insulin resistant. Those strategies can be absolutely fantastic for you. But if you're moving towards those strategies, you're going to want to optimize your stomach acid and definitely probably get some enzymatic support as well so that you don't have the loose stools, or even constipation can happen from those diets too, right?
Yeah. Everybody's diet and digestive tract is different. And so it's not to say that just loose stools or just diarrhea happens, but constipation could totally happen, especially if you went from a large amount of starch
Right.
with prebiotic effects in
Mm-hmm.
it to almost none.
Right.
Constipation could totally happen.
Yeah, I see that a lot with people who try to do carnivore diets and they're like, oh, need to take some Metamucil, some fiber capsules, something like that. What would you say would be a better approach for those people that are trying to switch to a diet without the as much fiber in it, just for therapeutic purposes? What could help them?
The same thing,
Same thing. Yep.
HCl and enzymes,
Okay.
because your stomach acid sets the speed clock of your digestion. Whatever the
Okay.
pH is exiting the bottom of the stomach, the intestines will be trying to figure out the rest of the way down, and that can cause slowness or fastness.
Got it. And then the other subset of people that have done keto and carnivore for a long time, they've had health improvements, yet now they've kind of hit this metabolic wall. That's the biggest group of people that I've been talking to over the last 6 months, year or so. They want to start doing some carb cycling. They want to add carbs in. That's where we'd really want to optimize again the enzymes. Would you say prioritize those first before anything else?
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially because, so we talked about lipase, but when it comes to vegetables and carbohydrates, starches, things like this, these are actually significantly more complex particles at a
Mm,
three-dimensional or biochemical level than protein or fat or meat or even legume protein or whatever. So protein and fat are pretty easy to
mhm.
deal with for the body. Carbohydrates and vegetable matter are much more complex. And so there's a host of enzymes that could be low that are connected to being able to break down these food products and the chemicals inside these food products, like polyphenols and things like this, that
Mm,
could be missing or just low in you because you haven't been eating this way for a number of years.
Got it. Got it. And then leaky gut can kind of fall on both sides, right?
Yeah, you could have leaky gut. It's mostly, good signs that you have leaky gut are food sensitivities, like you're also experiencing effects from your food systemically. So you eat a food, you feel brain fog. You eat a food, you feel joint pain.
Okay.
You eat a food, you have skin breakouts. That's a pretty good sign that leaky gut is happening. And leaky gut is when the food is basically able to pass into your bloodstream. Your gut cells are split apart and there's no bouncer. There's the regular activity of digestion and absorption is broken, and whatever's happening inside your gut is easily leaking into your bloodstream. Therefore, it's going systemic and it's just showing up wherever you have a genetic weak link.
Got it.
And that is also can happen, or it's often confused with histamine related issues.
Okay.
And so that's where something like Tributyrin X and butyrate supplementation is typically the fastest and one of the easiest ways to begin to provide the environment for the gut cells to heal up, to lower inflammation, and to correct the oxygen pH issues.
Got it. So just kind of an overall care, no matter what you're doing, if you're going keto, high fat, or eating more protein, got to optimize these things. And then for the other people who are trying to do the carbohydrates, I also think resistant starches can help too, with that digestion process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. The resistant starches will be talked about significantly in the next 5 years. I think the research is extremely clear and extremely confusing at this point, which is why Healthy Guts resistant starch product is not to market yet.
Oh,
We've
okay.
been testing and playing with them for 18 months. And the issue is that you need, so basically try resistant starches if you want. If you react to them right away, don't think you can push through it, because you might not be able to, because the people who don't react don't have the right microbiome species to break them down. And so also certain resistant starches are handled and cause different outcomes than others. So for instance, if we're talking about green banana flour versus raw potato starch or something like that, they're going to have a different outcome than, say, a high amylose corn resistant starch. And so if you react to one of them, you might need a different kind. And if you react to many of them, you might just not have the microbiome yet capable of breaking down these resistant starches.
Got it. The only resistant starches that I really have people try is basically like taking a baked potato, putting it in the refrigerator, letting it sit there for a couple hours, and then maybe popping it back out, putting it in the oven and eating it that way. Or even doing the same thing. I'm not a huge rice fan, but if someone wants to do rice, then I'm going to always try to have them do it as a resistant starch, to lessen the blood sugar issues. But yeah, there's
100%.
yeah.
So the ones that are proving in my experiments to be best tolerated and most helpful are the ones that have been cooked first
Yeah.
or processed in some enzymatic way such that they're not raw anymore.
Right.
So 100% do it with real food.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Well, I definitely want to talk about next time, because we're going to get together again in the future. Next time we'll talk maybe more about the probiotics and kind of looking at that when it comes to our allergies, gut health, that sort of thing. But this one, I feel like this episode was important to do in the beginning of the year for people who are making dietary changes, like I want to do more low carb, or I want to start carb cycling. So is there anything that you think maybe we didn't cover that you'd like to add into the conversation for this group of people who's making a dietary change right
now? Look, I've been in Facebook groups, and before Facebook groups, it was Yahoo listservs and chat boards and message boards since like I was, like 14 years old. So I've fallen prey to the groupthink that happens inside of these groups over and over and over again. And then I've fallen prey to my own ideas that like, hey, I have an oxalate issue. I have a gluten issue. I have a whatever issue. And only to go down the rabbit hole for 18 months and then realize it was only partially true. it was a yes and so that's what I want to just leave everybody with today is that most likely this change is going to reveal things to you, but the best way to be aware of those things is to use support products and ask people outside of the core group that you're working in.
Please do.
Yeah, so that you can take the beauty of a keto diet, the beauty of carb cycling, the beauty of whatever, and also don't fall victim to the dogma,
Mm-hmm.
because each dietary group and each community has really good things to give, but they also come with baggage. And being really clear about those things, I think, is going to get you the best results this year. And also, just remember, your poor stomach, your poor small intestine, and the immune system down there, and the large intestine, the microbiome, the gallbladder, nobody lets them know
Nope.
what you're about to do, and they can get caught off guard and be really struggling to help you with your goals. So support them, and normally your goals will come faster.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to finish the conversation off, and excited to chat more this year. We've got a lot more talks planned, but I think this is a really good foundational one, and I'll be sharing it other places just than my podcast, because I think people need to get this message about making these changes and that communication program. So thank you, Steve.